functional existence. As the days rolled into weeks, which spilled into months, your chamber embraced the new normal as the new walk of life. The Bengal Chamber, with its managing committee and the expert committees, under guidance of the past presidents and with overwhelming support from the membership and all stakeholders from near and far, embarked on a journey in which geographical barriers and distances were nullified. Digital and virtual became the realities of the day. This seamless transformation of bringing together people from all corners of the globe, addressing core issues of business, health, social and economic aspects is captured in a montage. What we have experienced is that our pre-pandemic and post-pandemic programs may have been held on different platforms, but the intensity of engagement from participants has only strengthened over these 100+ activities. The learnings were aplenty.
We will have to work in terms of taxation, in terms of policies for transfers to the poor. And I want to, though I'm saying that right now we cannot be obsessed with those big long-term changes. We have to worry about that very, very quickly, because the level of inequality we have in India is unacceptable and we have to work on that.
I know the NEP talks about it, and I'm totally in favor of having more of our base foundational education in Indian languages. And there needs to be a way of making sure that this is done even in elite schools. Otherwise, we'll end up with a two-track country. However, while the theory of this is good, the practice of it, however, needs to be thought about from a very basic perspective, which is that the textbooks and curriculums in Indian languages need to be radically upgraded and updated.
The SWOT analysis, which has been done by the chamber, it mentioned that credit is a major issue. Now, with this growth in the credit, which has been witnessed in the state, this is a problem.
The critical verticals of the economy and business were blended with talk shops and programs on a plethora of subjects. Even the Chamber's signature activities were held for a global audience, with participation climbing into several thousands.
We are moving from a consumer era to a post-consumer era. We had excesses in our lives, in our behavior, in our spending. But now we are all going to look towards for health and a better balance in what we are going to do.
We are doing certain things in order to be part of the region, but not adequate. It's not making the impact, because a lot of this is G2G, government to government, not enough P2P, people to people, and certainly not enough B2B, business to business. And relationships today in the modern world are less and less about G2G They are more and more about B2B and P2B.
So we want to have a national depository of knowledge, national practice for each and every item which is being imported in this country.
We are hoping to advance 5 key campaigns to support the reduction of emissions. We want to support a campaign on the transition to clean energy, and India is leading the world in many ways with its 450 gigawatts commitment on solar energy. The switch to clean transport, and I think there are huge opportunities for India to lead this work in this sector, particularly for 2- and 3-wheeled vehicles. A campaign on nature-based solutions to demonstrate how mangroves like Sundarban can not only, protecting mangroves like the Sundarban can not only help protect communities and help them be more resilient to the effects of climate change, but can also help serve as a carbon sink to mitigate climate change itself. Work on adaptation and resilience, which is particularly important in neighbouring Bangladesh, for example, and other low-lying areas prone to flooding. And then underpinning all of that, work on finance.
2 principal focus areas, especially during this time, are people and health. On both, the Chamber has communicated learnings, best practices, and even advisories over and over again to the community at large, going much beyond the immediate business fraternity.
The concept of herd immunity is when you have random spread of a factor and there is 60 to 70% of individuals who are unable to be affected by that factor, that constitutes herd immunity. And if we're all people and the virus infects people, then whether it's a herd in the US or a herd in India, the herd is the herd, right? It's worldwide, but the development and the speed with which immunity develops, that is locally dependent, right? So wherein we in the United States have taken social distancing in some areas to heart, and people have been in their homes for weeks, herd immunity is actually developing very slowly, but in those areas, infection rates are going down. We recognize that eventually we will develop 70% of people who are immune, and that will allow us to save lives, not just because you infect less people per se, but it's because the resources to treat those people become available when they get infected.
Life goes on. Setbacks are always temporary. We fall because we can pick ourselves up again. The Chamber believes that lives and livelihoods are and will be the defining features of this normal that we are living through. In this journey, we have focused as much on addressing the business ecosystem as we have on celebrating life.
আবিষ্কার খাবার এই যে ইনিশিয়েটিভটা, এটা আপনারা সকলে দেখতেই পাচ্ছেন প্রায় উৎসবে পরিণত হয়েছে, এবং এটাই আমাদের ইচ্ছে ছিল যে এত ধরনের মানুষ, এত ধরনের খাবার, এত ধরনের রান্নাবান্না প্রত্যেক দিন এরা করে, এবং এদের কোনো স্বীকৃতি নেই সেই অর্থে। হ্যাঁ, আমরা জানি যে আবিষ্কারায় খুব ভালো খাবার পাওয়া যায়, কিন্তু আজকে সাধারণ মানুষ সবাই বাইরে থেকে এসে সবাই মিলে খাচ্ছে। বেঙ্গল চেম্বার অফ কমার্স থেকে এই ইনিশিয়েটিভটা আমরা নিতে পেরেছি, তার জন্য খুব ভালো লাগছে, এবং সাধারণ মানুষ এইভাবে সাড়া দিয়েছেন, তার জন্য অনেক ধন্যবাদ।
Chamber's Business IT Conclave. This session is Digital Economy and its Dynamic, and it will be moderated by Mr. Arnab Basu, Chair. Chairperson IT Committee of Bengal Chamber, and Managing Partner is Technology Consulting Leader, PricewaterhouseCoopers Private Limited. We have with us Dr. Anindo Ghosh, Hansville Professor of Business, Professor Information Operations and Management Sciences, and Professor of Marketing, Academic Director, MS in Business Analytics Program, Co-Director, MS in Business Analytics, Capstone Program, NYU Stern, USA. We have with us Mr. Charlie Graf and Mr. Konstantin Statisnakis, Managing Partner and Senior Partner of Defendier Data-Centric Security from Switzerland, Mr. Fawaz Shakrala, Head of IT BIPD and Founder BTech Blockchain Group Bahrain, and Mr. Sanjay Puri, Chairman and Founder US-India Political Action Committee USA. So with this, I request Mr. Arnab Basu to take the session forward.
Thank you, Angana, and it's really a august gathering from all across the globe that we have here. And what more can be talked about the digital economy? I think the digital economy and the digital transformation that is driving it is something we have seen firsthand, all of us, over the last several months. And I think as we keep talking to different organizations, digital transformation remains a top priority for clients. And it's just that they're looking at it a bit differently. They're defining it a bit differently. And today we would hear about the digital economy from all the august speakers, and they would also look at it from different lenses. And when we look at what are the top priorities where organizations are spending, I think it's not just the normal ones around increasing productivity or cutting costs, but I think it's a lot about being better prepared for risks, being more sustainable, and improvement of the tech architecture has almost become like I would say, table stakes, right? And I think the way I see it, it is about, the digital economy obviously has to deliver better value, but also, I would say, safer value in today's world, right? And what do I mean by it? Of course, better value would mean, better access to market and sector knowledge. I would say analytical and data science innovation. How does the digital economy provide opportunities for creativity and innovation? The technology expertise, as I said, maybe providing a completely disruptive outside-in perspective, but it's also a lot about the safer value in terms of understanding of the relevant laws and the regulations, understanding the geopolitics and the economic risks involved, understanding the supply chains involved, maybe producing a clear and concise documentation about, what are the, different ways of competing in the market. And then, of course, taking responsibility. It's not just about providing a digital solution, right? So I think in terms of our program over the last week and this week, where we are looking at technology for humans, I think it's my pleasure to first invite Anindo to probably talk about how the work he has been doing and his team has been doing around well-being of humans, how technology is being used directly by, people across the globe for looking after themselves better, to ensure that they lead healthier lifestyle, to ensure that they get better, I would say, awareness about their own health. So over to you, Anindo, for your discourse.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm going to share my screen.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Arnab, for the introduction, and thank you, Angana, for inviting me. Very good evening to all of you in India. Good afternoon if you're in Europe. So, like Arnab said, I am here to talk to you about how we've been using, in a consortium of companies, a combination of wearable devices, digital platforms, and mobile health, to essentially see if we can make some concrete improvements in people's lives by improving their healthcare. Okay. This is a large-scale project, covering several months. In fact, more than 2 years now, in different parts of the globe, mostly in the Far East. But now, since then, we've also working with folks here in North America and in the Middle East, and we're starting to look at some potential partners in Europe as well. So the idea here is that as I'm sure you know, many of you have wearable devices, in your wrist, or you have an app on your phone that monitors how much you're walking, how much you're exercising, how much you're sleeping. There have been various combinations of sophistication in these mobile health apps. Some of them will essentially record rudimentary, basic data, such as your sleeping patterns and exercise patterns, but many of them are much more advanced, in which they also record your nutrition, what food you're eating, how many calories you are, putting in, and how many calories you are spending, and that sort of thing. The healthcare ecosystem is currently undergoing a disruptive digital transformation, right? And there's tremendous potential in shaping this healthcare industry towards this new era of what I refer to as a quantified self phenomena, where people are willing to track their data in order to make improvements in their lives. A lot of interesting, mergers and acquisitions have happened. You've all heard about Google and Fitbit. Very recently, Google also acquired the mobile health startup called Synosis, which uses pretty advanced cameras, accelerometers from your phone, and microphones from modern day smartphones as the new type of healthcare diagnostic tool. So since we started looking at this ecosystem, it occurred to us that there is a gap here. And the gap is nobody's really asked this question: does it make a difference in people's lives when they adopt these mobile health apps or wearable devices? Is it very short term or is it long term? I mean, some people make some changes in their lifestyle, but then does it stop after a few months, or do they continue? And more importantly, the bigger question in our mind is, can we measure the effect of changes in their lifestyle on actual healthcare outcomes like hospital visits and doctor visits, et cetera, et cetera? Okay. So our goal here is, we are essentially deploying in a variety of countries these mobile health solutions that can enable the capturing and the integration and the analysis of very critical interaction between patients, care providers, and the health system, so that we can get data on a continuum of patient care. Okay? And as you can imagine, this kind of smart and connected mobile health infrastructure can be especially helpful for chronic diseases like diabetes and blood pressure and glucose, sugar, those sort of things. Okay, and so while we are going through this process, we also cognizant of some challenges. Some people are concerned about privacy because they believe that their data belongs to them, and they're not very sure if they can trust a third party. So we have to obviously resolve some of those challenges and make it this sort of a butler-like service. A couple of years back, I wrote a book about how mobile smartphone data can be used by marketers, advertisers, in the form of a butler, or what we call, not a stalker, right? So we've also been doing this in a way that is, privacy friendly, and I'll talk a little more about that as well. So again, here's the main question, right? What is the impact of the adoption of mobile health technologies on the healthcare outcomes of patients with chronic diseases? And we're looking at 4 metrics. First, we're going to look at lifestyle and wellness behavior. Specifically, we're looking at eating, sleeping, exercising. What you're eating, how many calories you're putting in, okay, what you're exercising, how many calories you're spending, and then sleeping patterns, okay, and then any additional behavior like alcohol consumption and that sort of thing. Okay, so that's what we call the lifestyle wellness data. Then we have chronic health outcomes. So today, for the interest of time, I'll focus primarily on glucose and diabetes and those sort of things, but we can also look at blood pressure and other chronic diseases. The third thing we will look at is something long-term. If we are seeing evidence that people are making changes in their lifestyle, does that show in reduction in hospital visits over time, and also obviously reduction in medical expenses? Okay, so this is what we've been investigating. So again, like I said, we've done this in several parts of the world, but I'll situate this in one context. The first time we did this was in collaboration with the largest mobile health platform in Asia. They specialize in diabetes care. They have, at the time when we started talking with them, they had more than 156,000 active patients who were participating in this platform. This platform is, again, a consortium of mobile app developers, hospitals, physicians, nurses, and obviously wearable device companies. So it's really a nice interdisciplinary sort of a project. We worked with two sets of physicians, internal expert team of 20 physicians and nurses, and then an external expert team of more than 9,900 affiliated physicians. Okay? And the physicians come from all parts of, so they are pharmacists, nurses, psychologists, nutritionists, and not just general physician. And this was important. We're looking at the entire wellness behavior. Okay? Obviously, this required permission from the National Ministry of Health and the Office of Chronic Disease Management, just to make sure we are doing everything in a privacy-friendly way. That's the overall randomized setting. So to give you some examples of what these apps do, there are basically four core functions. Okay, so the patient app provides diabetes patients with 24/7 services. First of all, there's behavior tracking. This is where patients can record and upload at any point in time their blood glucose, their blood pressure, exercises, their diet, weight, sleeping patterns, nutrition, etc. Okay, that's just fundamental behavior tracking. The second thing is what we call personalized risk assessment. This is basically where we deployed machine learning and artificial intelligence algorithms to come up with a personalized risk assessment for each patient. This will take into account more than 45 different types of medical conditions for each patient, including the stage of the diabetes, the type of diabetes, like diabetes 1 or 2, if the patient is pregnant, whether they have other comorbidities, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a non-trivial way to predict, to extrapolate the current risk assessment into a future risk assessment. And this is the core part of the app. The third thing is Q&A. So in this app, the patients can contact any of those physicians, either in the internal or the external network, for free consultation regarding medication, treatment, etc. And finally, we have the patient community. This is where patients can basically participate in a digital community by talking to each other. There's a lot of support groups, right? So like-minded people reach out to each other for these kind of support groups. Okay, so just to give you one, those are the four core functions of this app. And we are primarily focused on number one and number two, the behavior tracking feature and the risk assessment and the personalized solution. Okay? Next, I'm going to show you some screenshots of what these apps look like. So as you can see from the screen here, the one on the left is basically illustrating an overview of the homepage after you log in. Okay. And as you will see, when we carried out these experiments, we were cognizant that not every patient on the planet will have a mobile phone. Yes, mobile phones are ubiquitous, but there are many folks in poorer countries who don't necessarily have a smartphone, but they may have other kind of internet connection. Okay? So we devised a desktop version, a web version, as well as a mobile version. And they have very similar features. But the idea was to examine differences between desktop users and mobile users. So this is what the homepage looks like. As you can see, there's a lot of features that talk about your sleeping, smoking, drinking, and the sugar button is where you input your daily blood glucose levels. At the time when we started working with this, the method was the standard prick. You prick your finger and then you sort of put it in. But more recently, we've also gotten access to some newer technologies that can scan, instead of pricking, they can actually scan and predict what the blood glucose levels are. It's not, at least my anecdotal understanding, is not as accurate as the self-pricking method. And this is the next figure shows you how the user behavior tracking pages looks like. This is where you are visualizing the blood glucose, your blood pressure, your diet, your exercise. You can see your high and low blood pressure, the calories, calories spent during exercises, and those sort of things. Okay. So again, the basic idea is we are going to carry out a massive field experiment with thousands of patients. And you're going to see the design next. We are then going to be looking at a treatment and a control. One set of patients who are given access to these mobile apps, another set of patients who are not given access to this, and then we examine the difference between people who have these versus those who don't. Okay. So this is a little more detail on what the field experiments have looked like. Like I said, we've done this now in China and South Korea, now doing this in other parts of the world. This is the first of many, right? So the basic idea is, let's start with a randomized sample of, let's say, 1,000 patients, okay? And we are going to examine them over a 15-month period. The time period has to be long enough so that we can examine both the short-term and the medium and possibly long-term effects. So we're going to have two control groups. The first control group we had was basically the baseline, right? These guys get access to no apps, either the web or the mobile app, okay? And then we have the treatment groups. The second control group is the one that only has access to the internet app, the desktop app. And then we have three treatment groups. One set of patients got the smartphone app. A second set of patients got the smartphone app along with a reminder, a daily reminder that comes like a text message. And it basically reminds you, hey, it's time for you to exercise, or it's time for you to, walk a little around, or it's time for you to eat healthier, that sort of thing, a very generic reminder. But then we also wanted to look at personalization because, of this privacy and personalization debate. And so we have a third treatment group here. Those are the patients where they get the mobile app, but in addition to the mobile app, they also get a personalized reminder with patient-specific data advice from the medical doctors. Okay, so this one, the last treatment group would be like, hey, Anindo, today you only walked 45 minutes. You normally walk an hour. Maybe you should walk a little more. Or today you had, 300 more calories than normal. Let's tomorrow cut it down by 300 calories. So it's very personalized. And part of the reason is we wanted to see if people respond better to personalization as opposed to generic ones. Okay? So I won't get into much details, but this table will tell you the main set of findings. And since it's scientific research, I did want to show you some numbers before talking about the implications, right? So the way to interpret this is, if you look at the first column, this tells you the difference in glucose levels of these patients before they adopted mobile devices, apps, and after. The second column tells you the hemoglobin levels. This is glycated hemoglobin level. So if you are a diabetes patient, you know what a glycated hemoglobin level is. This tells you how that changed for patients who adopted mobile health apps versus those who don't. And the third and the fourth column tells you the long-term effects, okay? Like, did the hospital visits reduce and did the medical expenditures reduce, okay? And so the core groups of interest for us are the three treatment groups, T1, T2, T3. And you will see, first of all, look at the magnitude. All of the three treatment groups have a higher magnitude than the two control groups, okay, for glucose and for hemoglobin. What this is saying that all the patients who've been treated with a mobile health app or treated with a health app along with a reminder that is generic or a reminder that is personalized, they all make active changes in their lifestyle that actually reduces their glucose levels, reduces their glycated hemoglobin levels, okay? In addition, they also have fewer hospital visits, okay? And they have lower expenses. So not only are we seeing a short-term positive impact on their wellness, but we're also seeing a longer-term impact on their hospital visits and on their expenditure. Okay? So there's a lot more detail in these projects that we have. If any of you is interested, just let me know. I'm happy to send you all of these papers. But just to remind you again, the method that is going on, the mechanism is that first, patients adopt these wearable devices and their mobile health apps. They enroll in this large-scale digital platform that has already 150,000 patients at this point. Then they get these personalized or generic reminders by a team of physicians, okay? Then, first of all, in the short term, they make changes in their daily food habits, their daily exercise habits, and in their daily sleeping patterns, the three main things. Then we further break it down into specific elements of what kinds of food, nutrition, balancing, fat, calories, and protein and carbohydrate, that sort of thing. We also look at exercise between walking and running, aerobic and cardio, that sort of thing, okay? So I will end by just summarizing in the next 2 minutes what we are seeing here. We are excited about these projects because we have implemented them now in the real world. We are seeing the following three things, okay? So first of all, the adoption of these mobile health platforms that are enabled by wearable devices and apps very clearly shows a statistically significant effect on patients' immediate wellness, whether it's in terms of changing their food and diet and exercise and sleeping, which in turn leads to a drop in their glucose and diabetes levels, also leads to a drop in other chronic diseases like blood pressure. We definitely see a longer term effect as well. In fact, we have seen that for these patients, over a 15-month period, as they reduce their chronic diseases, there's a reduction in hospital visits, so there's and a reduction in medical expenses. There is some of that substitution with telehealth, but overall, the frequency of interactions with physicians is going down. For parts of the world where there are differences between, internet penetration on desktops and web penetration, we definitely see that mobile has a stronger effect than desktop. So now we are working with a variety of stakeholders in this ecosystem to essentially increase the impact and generalize this beyond some of the pilot studies we've done, because we believe that there's very clear implications. There's implications obviously for patients in modifying their well-being and health outcomes through their behavioral modifications, which can be a diet change or a lifestyle change, etc. And there's also clearly implication for the stakeholders like physicians, hospitals, and the healthcare ecosystem. If we can reduce by facilitating behavioral modifications, if we can reduce the frequency of visits and the medical expenses, then clearly this has some non-trivial, very positive social welfare impact as well. So like I said, we've done this now successfully in a few places, a few countries in Asia, mostly in the Far East. And now we are in talks with various stakeholders in the Middle East and Europe, US, and gradually getting into Europe. So thank you again. I'll stop here, Arnab, and maybe if there's any questions, happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Anindo. We do have a few questions which have come in as you were speaking. The first one, of course, is that there are several mobile apps in the market right now, and how do you choose between them? And, you also mentioned that, and that's what I noticed, that, the non-personalized interventions led to the, best results, not the personalized ones, as, you would normally think. So I think if I sort of club these two questions, your views of, plethora of mobile apps, and why do you think the non-personalized ones are more successful?
Yeah. So on the first question, how do you choose the mobile health apps? So we've done this through various partnerships with the government. So in many of these countries, the government has taken an active step to identify which is their partner for mobile health app and recommend only one or two apps to these patients. Okay. So instead of leaving the search cost on the patients, and it's coming from top down. Okay, so it's almost like a government mandate. Let's do it this way. And that removes the discovery and the search costs. The second one, you're absolutely right. So we were very intrigued about this privacy personalization debate. And it turns out that we are finding increasingly that even in places like the Far East, where the people are a lot more far less privacy concerned, in the world of healthcare, they did show some resistance. So they responded better to generic messages, but not to personalized messages. So we followed up our field experiments with surveys. We went back to each of those few thousand patients and surveyed them, and the vast majority of them said that two things. One is when it's very personalized, healthcare reminder, we feel like we are being judged in how we live our lives, and we don't like that judgment. Okay, so a little bit of a hands-off approach is preferable. We feel that there is some privacy intrusion, which is an interesting remark, because when we reminded them, do you realize that when you upload your data, you're actually sharing your data not just for your own benefit, but for the benefit of the whole community? Because our team of machine learning engineers have access to not just your data, but everybody's data, and we are, training our algorithms on that data. So they seem to be okay with that approach, but they were a little apprehensive about getting these personalized reminders.
So a follow-up question, which is more a question from me, Anando, is that, I'm giving you my data, and as you said, that people are feeling judged. What's your thought around, diabetes is a chronic disease, and, generally we see that there are several other diseases which tends to get, come into a patient after several years of being a diabetes patient, right? So, do you have any kind of predictive models working in terms of trying to say that, okay, you have been a diabetic for the last 5 years, this is what your data has been, or whatever, and hence we now think that, these are the three other very serious complications, whether it's about a kidney, about your heart, or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's what I want you to be careful of, not just solve the more, I would say, more mundane issue of, whether you've taken your medicine or whether you've done your exercise. I'm not saying that they're less important, because they are probably more important. But I think in terms of when I think of myself as a patient, if I get a bit of advanced prediction, probably that could be a very useful thing for somebody like.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Absolutely. So this is definitely incorporated in a basic way at this point in our algorithms, but we have plans of, building a much more elaborate sort of predictive model that incorporates this and then predicts possible anomalies in the future. So right now, the way it works is, based on your, again, these three elements, exercise and sleeping and diet, and this glucose, blood pressure levels, we can definitely predict any anomalies in your current or near short term. Okay. In addition to that, we've also gotten data on their other comorbidities, which might not be flaring up at this point, but they are basically below the radar. So for instance, for people who are providing their, blood report data, we're also collecting other elements from the blood reports. So the basic idea is, in the future, we want to build a model that will predict, 3 years from now, watch out for, a stroke, or watch out for, some sort of, arrest. So yeah, I think that is basically in the works. So we haven't fully implemented that yet.
Thank you, Anindo, and it was really quite enlightening to hear about what's happening in this field. So thanks a lot for your time. I would probably move now to Charlie and Constantine. I think we heard Anindo talk about, patients being not too keen to share their data. You both are from Switzerland. We know about the very strict data regulations in the EU. And of course, the great concern that we have for security of our data. And not just about, my health data, which is of course very, very, private, but even generic consumer data, because we tend to be seeing this huge data explosion happening. And so what are your thoughts around that, and what you're seeing in the digital economy around protecting yourselves? Charlie, over to you.
Thank you very much. Let me share my screen, and then we kick it off. So it was very interesting to hear about that. Hopefully we can link some of this information with data privacy and protection. So warm welcome from myself and from Konstantin. We would like to take the chance to talk about data privacy, especially in those areas where we think it would be very important and relevant. Especially, as you just mentioned, the regulations. As we know, always IT follows the business and the latest trends. There's a lot of things going on. Also, due to the pandemic, digitalization has been pushed a lot. Home office have pushed a lot. So what we are trying to do today is creating some awareness of sensitive data and how can we make sensitive data a little bit more secure with some technical measures. A little bit of ourselves today. We are coming from Switzerland. Of course, we have we are So, can you hear us again?
Yes, we can, Charlie.
Okay, sorry about that. We just will re-kick it off. Sharing my screen. Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Today we would like you give a little bit some insights on sensitive data and especially exposed to internal threats. We would like to show you one specific solution to counteract that risk, and we would also give you a little live demo on how this looks like on one specific use case. First of all, we would like to give you some information about the large research that has been done on internal threats. And they sent out a few thousand, 400,000 questionnaires to the market, to the IT and security people. And they got the following feedback regarding internal threats. So internal threat is really something that has to be considered in the all-over security consideration. The problem is not from outside initially, because there might be some volumes and attacks. Of course, we see this every day. The problem is on inside threats that you have the chance for high quality data and really concentrated data that might impact your organization. And if you see some of the key risks that have been stated, that there is a few risks, especially that people have broad access to the data. Also, business processes are there or routines that led to a data breach, mainly unintentional. And also, most of the organizations stated that they really have recorded some offenses regarding insider risks. So that's something organizations should consider if they provide any services with sensitive data. Give us the opportunity to quickly talk about the technical and organizational measures. We have the example of the GDPR in the EU, which has come effect in 2018, and more countries are adopting some of these rules. And one thing most of those rules have in common: sensitive data needs to be protected with either and organizational and technical measures. Especially on the technical measures, there are a few things that need to be considered, like we've seen before with the e-health or other financial services, whatever, that there are a few things that needs to be considered and needs to be done in order to be sure that the sensitive data of a data owner is protected accordingly. There are a few things that can be done and should be considered in an overall solution. We also are aware that a few changes has also come into India with the Data Protection Bill Act from 2019, that there are a few things are in common, and also we've seen that you have a few differences. But the main principle is always the same. Let's protect sensitive data from disclosure and abuse. So this should be one of the basic principles in all solutions that we design. When we talk about personal identification, which is identification data, which is actually the key element of most of businesses outside, that we not only think about credit card details, that we only not think about address detail, but there are much more data that needs to be considered, as you can see on the latest trends. We also put e-health there, that e-health is becoming a huge potential for digital data that will be stored globally through cloud services, through any other services that actually consolidating all this data. So Internet of Things, where your smart home becomes interesting to know what are your behaviors when you go up, what kind of food or drinks you like, when you go to bed, all this information becomes crucial in protecting. And that's why we think it's very important to really consider what kind of data do we have and what do we do with it. But this is not the end of the story. We not only have just personal identification data, there are much more data around in your organization. There might be some personal information like customer information, but you also have employee information, as we just mentioned, health and other information. But more relevant are also the feature data that you have. For example, contracts, blueprints, intellectual property. So all these items that actually represents your enterprise assets. Mostly we've seen so far is that those items are not really in the consideration of the data protection measures organization take. But what is happening if your core VCP of an organization is in the hand of your competition? Most probably you won't like that. So whatever you do, we should consider in your model, what kind of data do you have? How risky is to lose it or to have it in other hands? When you have the influence factors, we talked about GDPR before. Of course, data privacy laws are one area, but you have regulatory requirements. You have probably corporate guidelines, or you have social trends like ethical and moral responsibility, which lead to the fact that you have sensitive data that you would like to protect. We would like to give you an example of how could technical measures be taken for protecting data. Today, we will talk about personal data and business applications. There is one area of technical measures that you can use. It's called DCAP. And DCAP is something Gartner Group used recently for consolidating products and services that are combining multiple disciplines to protect your data. And there are a few products, and we will show you one example today, how we can really protect data from unwanted disclosure or unwanted use. But before we go into this, one area we always find interesting to talk to organization is what kind of risks are related to the data we have, the data we use, we collect, or we provide with other organizations. And here is one item that we think is very useful. If you do a threat modeling, thinking about what kind of scenarios might lead to a higher risk or might to a reputation problem with the organization. And as an example, we are combining all use cases into three basic groups. One is all risk related to access patterns. Do we want really standard access middle of the night where we don't have any business hours? Then we have as a second group, like more in the area of fraud monitoring or unusual behavior within the business processes. So we have the business process use cases, and we will show you today one which is called access to special sets of data. In our example, we will use the VIP customers because we will showing you a use case on a CRM. And the final group is actually that we have specific use cases for securing the data either in motion or at rest, like encryption, exfiltration, exports, and data. So where the data flow comes into the mind, we also want to make sure that we are protecting the data from higher risks. So let us follow now an example that we are going to show you. The VIP customers is, we've seen this with many organizations around here when we integrate those solutions, that especially telecoms or financial services, they have a set of customers where data exposure shouldn't happen at all because they might impact the person, that might impact the partners. So the VIP customer has become a very important use case to us. We're going to show you a use case called dynamic masking of VIP customer data, which means that we will have a business application containing VIP customers, but we are going to mask the data for those users who are not allowed to see VIP customers. But technically speaking, we are not changing the data at the source, so the data remains integral for all other processes or other use cases. But if it comes to consummation of VIP customers, we are going to change the clear data into a masked data format so we don't have any disclosure that we don't want. What we are going to show you now is a small online CRM application, and we are going to interact with a DCAP solution where we have installed an agent on the business application, which is monitoring the data flow from the request to the data delivery from the data source. And we are going to actually change some of the data requests where we see VIP customers coming into effect. Let me now change here, and I will hand over to Konstantin so he can give you some insights about what we are going to do.
Thank you, Charlie. So as Charlie just mentioned and laid out before, what we are seeing here is a small CRM application. This is an online application called OpenBravo. And in this OpenBravo application, we just accessed it with two different users, which are from the same company. And they actually are virtually sitting close to each other, having similar rights. One of the users has a little bit more rights, who is able to see afterwards, once we do the transformation, afterwards is still able to see the VIP customers, the other one is not. What we see right here is Adam actually and Bill are logged in, and they have accessed the customer list, and they see all the customers in just clear. And this is what we basically see in most companies, which we didn't have any interaction or didn't do any modification of their business process. As Charlie just pointed out before, all of our data streams are
You cannot see the screen, you only see the PPT. Wo kann ich das schnell wieder machen? Ich sehe es nicht.
We're just coming back for 1 second. We have to re-share our screen. Just let us know if you see now our screens. In this case, you should see again the two OpenBravo sessions of the CRM. So let me just get back for 1 minute and explain you what you see. What you see here is actually the two different users which are logged into these the CRM, which are seeing both the customer list. One of the customers, Adam, and the other user is Bill. Excuse me for this one. And they see actually just the plain customer list where we have not did any interaction with that one. As Charlie pointed out just before, there are some of the customers which belong to a VIP list, and they don't want to be exposed to all of the users of this application or this company. So what we are going to do right now is we just activate our agent, which is on which does not affect any of the source data, but just all data in motion. So we are able to catch within the stream the data coming from the database to the screen of this specific user, and we modify this one. Please, this is very important. Just acknowledge that the data are not changed at all at the source. They are always integer, and they can always be used for any other processes. So what we're going to do right now is activate the agent and the rule, and I'm going to re-access here the customer list, do here the same again, and what you will be you'll be seeing here right now, Adam is accessing the customer list, and suddenly he does not see 5 of these customers or 4 of these customers because they are encrypted in motion, and pointed out that he has no access to this one. He knows right now that these are VIP customers, but he don't know exactly which you are. If we compare that to Bill knows exactly which they are. He can still access all of the data, and he's a kind of governance user who can access all of the data for any time.
The big opportunity here is that we can specifically work on specific data items, data subjects like names, like address, like email. So we can really specifically mark and change the data from of course, this is dynamically masked. You know that the data has changed, but we also can change social security number and can pseudonymize or anonymize. So you see a number, but you don't know whether it's a real number or not. Now, coming to the next use case that we've seen a huge risk in applications is the export feature, that you can export data from the application.
Once you do this, so we see, hey, now the user might be smart enough and say, hey, come on, I can access all this data, or I can tear them down and use it for my personal purpose, or for whatever reason he'd like to download this one. So he goes to the export function, downloads all the data, and say, hey, I got now all this information. But in this case, you see exactly, oh, the data are not coming in clear, but they come as we saw them before in the application. They're encrypted and not accessible for this user here. If Bill does the same one, Bill has access to these. He can open that one, and he sees all of the data in clear and can continue to use them. What we now done is actually, hey, we go one step further and say, hey, once we allow our employees to export the data and tear them down to a local drive or whatever, or he wants to share them, send them out through email, upload it to any Dropbox or whatever. We say, okay, once we do this, we go one step further and we encrypt all this data using Microsoft information protection services. And what you see now is actually when we do the export, it creates an Excel file. This Excel file we are going to open, and Excel informs us, hey, we're accessing rights management here. And if you are allowed to see these data, this is okay. And if you're not allowed, and if policies say we don't want to do that, we say, hey, you're actually not allowed to access all this data. You will not be allowed to download them or to do any further use except of the use within the company or our policy say. Sorry? Go ahead.
So, as a quick summary, what we've done in this very short time is we protected sensitive data from unwanted disclosure in dynamically masking the data. And secondly, we encrypted the exported data in the XLS file as a protected file. So in that case, we have one use case, but actually 2 items have been protected. So DCAP gives you one area of protection where you can do this quite easily with minimal invasive installation requirements on the application side, but you have full control on the data, and you really also can monitor the transactions out of it. You can also create security alerts based on monitoring use cases, etc. So that's why we think DCAP is one instrument for protecting sensitive data with not influencing too much the business strategy, the digitalization path, but still we have control on the sensitive data.
Thank you, Charlie and Konstantin. So I think some questions have come through. The first one is that, while this is very nice to see in terms of an organization, how they can invest in, protecting the data, as a consumer, when I'm parting with my data, how do I understand the kind of data protection which, the organizations which would be getting my data, how they would react? So it's more the, consumer to organization dilemma versus how organizations are there, they're taking to, how is that visible to customers?
This is a very good question. When we see on the social trends recently, when social media has come up, and also, let's say, maturization of people using smartphones and mobile apps, etc., that people in generally have a natural trust on their provider. So they share the data, they do it because they think, of course, this is a company which has a reputation, etc. it's only rely on basically on trust of the user that the company is handling my data very well. Besides, especially in the EU, where we have the GDPR, where the companies are forced to protect my personal data, and I've always have the right to claim what the company is doing with my data. I also can request for rights to be forgotten, that if I don't have any business relation anymore or any other purpose for them keeping my data, ask them to delete my data. But still, it's always based on trust. And we know that the business is always advancing very fast. They are very innovative. They try to bring in new stuff. The regulator is always behind, tries to stop this. And so I think sometimes you have to be in the middle, that the consumer should, especially when it comes to very, very sensitive information, financial information, health information, personal identity information, that this person really consider, am I really willing to give my data to this organization? Do they have anything in mind or anything established to protect my data, if not by the regulatory or by legal laws? So trust is the only item we have at this point in time.
The other question which Charlie came across was that as we've all moved into very quickly, in some cases in an unprepared manner, into this work from home model for across the world, what kind of, additional risks that you see have been, sort of taken or, has come in the last 6 months compared to how we were before?
Very excellent question as well. We've seen one big risk that has arisen is if you are forcing people to work from home. Many people, they have their infrastructure from the employer. Some are using their own infrastructure. One big problem is that all of a sudden, all data that the organization use has been distributed decentrally extremely fast. So actually managing the data flow and controlling what kind of sensitive data is where has become very, very much difficult, I would say. And you have to do a lot of efforts actually to control and manage this sensitive data. So of course we understand that organizations want to remain in the business and make sure that all the daily processes are still up and running. But when it comes to the data privacy and protection, this latest home office trend has impacted this area, probably accepted by compliance and governance within organization. But IT and security, they have to do something to reduce the risks. So one was urgent, now comes the homework that those organizations need to do. But data has been distributed like crazy.
Thank you, Charlie, and thank you, Constantine. That was really quite interesting, and to understand how this can be, secured. I'll move to a slightly different topic around how, smart contracting and how, blockchain is impacting the digital economy. So we have Mr. Fawaz Chakrala, from the BTech Blockchain Group. And of course, he's also the head of IT BIPD. So Fawaz, I think maybe if you would like to share a few thoughts around, we keep hearing around blockchain, how it's impacting the digital economy.
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Arnab, for the introduction. First of all, I appreciate the opportunity to be able to present this information, and especially for the team who made this possible for this event from BCCI. I'm sure it was a big challenge organizing the event for multiple speakers in different countries. So a lot of credit goes to them. So I'll be talking about blockchain and digital economy, how blockchain plays an important and critical role in the digital economy globally, right? We'll talk about some examples, and we're going to see how this actually presents a major opportunity for you as a as a business owner, or even as an executive of existing company, and how you can leverage blockchain to help improve your value proposition for your customers. So, but first off, I just want to share, before I begin, I just want to share some important facts here. This was published by the United Nations Conferences and Trade and Development report. It's called the Blockchain the Digital Economy Report. And the numbers are really shocking. So when we look at here, some important numbers, the geography of the digital economy is highly concentrated in two countries, mainly China and the United States. So for example, 75% of all patents related to blockchain technologies is owned and controlled or obtained by US and China, 25% for the rest of the world. 50% of global spending on IoT is between China and the US. More than 75% of the global computing market is between China and the US, right? And these are shocking numbers. And when you look at here, for example, China and the US, 90% of the global market cap value of the world's 70 largest digital platforms is owned by the US and China, right? So these are shocking numbers, which basically these are clear indicators. When you look at 75% of the global patents of blockchain technology owned by US and China, it's a clear indicator that they believe blockchain is going to be an important role in playing in the future of global digital economy. And that's one of the reasons why they're going after such patents in blockchain technologies. With Bitcoin, with Ethereum, with a lot of the different blockchain platforms currently in the market, this really paints a clear picture of where we're heading in the future. So the agenda for today is I'll be talking about the impact of COVID-19 on the digital economy currently. I'll talk about the birth of blockchain, how this whole thing started, just very briefly about Bitcoin. And then I'll talk about how blockchain works in terms of transactions and in terms of blocks. And then I'll talk about security in blockchain and how blockchain is solving business problems today in different industries such as healthcare and also in, for example, real estate sector. And if we have some time, I'll go briefly about how to start a blockchain project. First off, the impact of COVID-19 on the digital economy. We basically have two main areas of impact. One is COVID-19, the beginning of the year, when it happened in March, it accelerated the digital transformation of companies. So in the beginning of the year, many companies in different industries were already looking at digital transformation, improving their value proposition using digital technologies, using different digital technologies. When COVID-19 hit, and then people had to work remotely from home, it sort of accelerated that. Companies are closing down, branches of banks are closed for physical, people coming physical to the branches. So they had to really start implementing their digital transformation projects immediately on the spot. The second area here we have actually is customers became much more demanding in their products and services. So for example, if you're an existing company right now offering your products and services, and some of your top 20 customers, the second they see your competitors are offering a better price point product or a lower price point product, they're going to go straight there. They're going to skip you and go straight there. And this is a high risk, right? Simply because of the COVID-19 impact on the price sensitivity of products and services, right, going forward. Especially this covers US, Europe, and the Middle East. So it is now imperative that companies have to look at how can they leverage the latest innovative technologies to help improve their unique value proposition or unique selling point for their end customers. And one of them is leveraging the latest technology, whether it's blockchain, whether it's AI, whether it's RPA, whether it's any other automation tools to help really improve, number one, the quality of their services and provide a better price point for their end customers to make sure they maintain their main customers, right? So now let's shift a little bit about the birth of blockchain, how we all got here. If you think back to 2008, 2009 financial crisis, there's a movie on Netflix called The Big Short, which is based on a true story. The entire world economy was sinking so fast like the Titanic, and almost every industry was impacted, right? Retail industry, real estate, banks stopped lending money, capital was being wiped off, the credit crisis, and so on. So, and then we later found out that the leaders, the executives, and the CEOs of those big banks on Wall Street, they were responsible for creating the financial crisis. There's a couple of movies that prove this. A movie called Inside Job, and they talk specifically about this. And to make matters worse, the executives and the CEOs of those banks, they weren't even prosecuted in court in the US, right? They weren't even prosecuted for fraud or any kind of fraud activities, right? So this raises serious concerns. So a guy or a group of people by the name of Satoshi Nakamoto said, based on the system, I cannot trust the system. I have to create a brand new system where I can be able to shift money person to person, country to country, skipping the banks and skipping the central banks. Because if I put my money in those banks, these guys, they had the chance, they would do it again. Guess what? They will do it again because they know they can get away with it, right? So, and then of course, Bitcoin was created with the white paper and everything else. And then a few years later, a guy by the name of Vitalik Buterin, who was actually a computer science student at the time in Canada, who was very interested in Bitcoin and how it functions, and specifically the technology that makes Bitcoin possible, the security behind it. So he was interested to see how Bitcoin works and how blockchain works. And then he started forming different hypotheses saying that how can I leverage blockchain, the technology that makes Bitcoin possible, and implement it on different corporations, companies, for use cases which companies can actually benefit from, not only for a cryptocurrency based between person to person. And so he joined forces with other technology professionals, and they moved to Switzerland and they launched Ethereum. In 2015, Ethereum was born. And when Ethereum was created, it brought to us a brand new economic model of opportunities for us to consider. STO, security token offering, is one of those new opportunities. Token share ownership, record registration, and of course, smart contracts. Now, in the beginning, in 2015, in the summer, in July, it was called ICOs, initial coin offering. It was for the first time in the history of our world where a company can actually launch an application and allow the general public globally to subscribe to their token by purchasing into that token using Ether or using any of the cryptocurrencies. They can actually purchase and subscribe to that token. And of course, we know that many of the ICOs did not even materialize. There's a lot of fraud cases behind them, but the technology still works. And that's what proves to us that technology still actually works. And that's what creates a big opportunity for us to consider. And now with STOs going forward, is now regulations playing an important role into making this possible. Now let's talk a little bit about blockchain transactions and blocks. Very simply, every transaction on the open ledger, it can be altered, modified, or deleted. Any transaction has a date and timestamp, a sender and receiver, and account address. Every block on the blockchain has a group of transactions, about 120 to 130 transactions per block. Decentralized means there's no central control on these applications on the ledger, right? So it's important to understand cryptocurrency is one type of an application on the blockchain. The same way we say email is one type of an application on the internet. Video streaming is a different kind of application on the internet. So cryptocurrency smart contract is another kind of an application on the blockchain. Record registration, or also known as records keep, also is a different kind of application on the blockchain. And this is why we're seeing how we can leverage those different kinds of applications for different use cases today that we can actually solve in different industries. Now, one of the core security layers in blockchain is called the SHA-256, which stands for Secure Hashing Algorithm 256-bit. Now, this is one of the core foundations. If you guys are watching this on your laptops, you can actually scan this with your mobile. It will take you to the screen, which we will see next. It's just a simple representation how SHA function works and why it plays such a critical role in blockchain. So here's what the screen will look like. So SHA is based on a mathematical algorithm. When I take any input message, let's say, for example, I type Fawaz here, F-A-W-A-Z, and I hit calculate the hash value, Bitcoin and Ethereum, they use SHA-256. I will get a fixed length output here, right? This is a fixed length output only that corresponds to Fawaz. If I change one letter, I'm going to get a different fixed length output. If I only put a dot instead of Fawaz, for example, I'm just going to get a fixed length output. Now, why this is important? Because mathematically, and based on this algorithm, 98% chance I would not be able to reverse the transaction. I cannot go back from the output to try to find out what the input message is, right? And this is a critical component of what blockchain is, because they say you cannot change or modify previous transactions, right? Why is this important? Because it limits the opportunity for fraud, for counterfeit, for faking registrations, for falsifying financial records, for falsifying data. This is one of the core components why blockchain makes this possible. Again, because of the financial crisis, centralized control, and people having unlimited control on databases, a CEO has an unlimited power to be able to modify financial records, the database records on their systems, and no questions are asked. But with this system, we limit the possibility of fraud and counterfeit money, counterfeit issues from happening on this system. Right? And here's a simple representation of how blockchain works. You have, this is just block number 1, block number 2, and block number 3. And when you look at here, let's say some data here, let's say, for example, there are some transactions. If I send 5 Bitcoin to my friend Mike in Australia, I'd have the transaction details written here. This is the hash value. So this means that this block has this specific hash output. The second block also has another hash output. And it also links the previous block with this hash output, which means that, again, this is why we say the blockchain is very difficult to hack and intercept because of the built-in hashing algorithm within the network itself. This is why it's very difficult to be able to go back. I cannot go back and change or modify any transactions here because it's going to give me an error. It will not even allow me to, right? Because of the architecture of the system and because of the hashing algorithm built into the blockchain network, right? So we have to understand what blockchain is not, right? So blockchain is not this magical technology that's going to solve your problems. Right? It's not this. It's not going to triple your revenue. It's not going to reduce your OPEX cost or double your customers, right? It's a technology stack, but when it's combined with the right business case, the right use case, you can really provide a value proposition for your end customers. The key to any successful IT project is choosing the right technology for that right use case, for that right project to be able to really gain the benefits needed from that specific project, the ROI, and your benefits for your customers or for your enterprise. And specifically using blockchain, you have to be able to decide, do I need blockchain for this use case? Yes or no? And if so, what kind of a blockchain platform would be most suitable for my business case or for my use case? So let's take a look at how blockchain is solving business problems today. Education sector, healthcare sector, and real estate sector. Some simple problems. In the education sector, you have fake certificates now being issued worldwide from different online companies, which can be purchased for $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 worldwide. And this is creating a big strain on the customers. Let's take a closer look as to how this works. So this report was published by the BBC in 2018, and it was discovered that many online organizations are offering education certificates from major international universities, offering PhDs, offering master's degrees, offering bachelors in different specializations, which you can purchase for $2,500, $3,000 with your name and with the university's seal on the actual certificates. So how can blockchain play a role in limiting this problem or solving this problem? Here's how this works. Blockchain solution currently available and working right now with every, let's say, for example, in the UAE, they're doing this. Every certificate issued by a university in the UAE will have a QR code on it. You'll be able to open the app on the mobile app of that university, let's say XYZ University, open the mobile app, scan the QR code. It will link to the database of the UAE, of the XYZ University system. It will confirm to you this certificate is authentic and original and issued by XYZ University. The reason is every output of this specific, let's say, a certificate is issued on a blockchain transaction that gets hashed and secured within the system of the XYZ universities, which gives you security, transparency, and trust for the people who are graduating and for people who want to be able to hire them in the future, right? This is also happening in University of Bahrain, and many universities across Europe are starting to adopt this solution as well. Now, in healthcare, this is published by Cointelegraph. One of the biggest problem in healthcare today is you have different segregated data for patient records. You have falsified lab test results, manipulation of patient records, forged prescriptions, where people are forging prescriptions to get access to specific medicine or drugs, right, illegally, right? So how can blockchain play a role into resolving this problem or being able to eliminate this problem from happening? Again, by issuing every single test result, issuing on a blockchain transaction that gets hashed, and then being able to open, let's say, the hospital's mobile app, scanning the QR code of that specific prescription, and it will link to you to that specific database, and it will tell you that this actual prescription is authentic and original and issued by, Johns Hopkins University, Johns Hopkins Hospital, by Dr. So-and-so, right? And this will confirm that it will limit the possibility of fraud or manipulation of fraud records. The same thing for patient records, the same thing for forged prescription, the same thing for falsified lab test results. This solution helps limit the possibilities of this issue, right? And of course, in real estate, when you have different scams, like this happened in Dubai recently, an agent posing was using fake contracts and fake unit documents. And again, a blockchain solution now being implemented by Dubai Land Department, where any person can go and actually access the actual apartment and enter the address of the apartment or the home or the villa, and look at it will confirm to you that this apartment is actually owned by X and so person, or it's actually it's available for sale, or it's already occupied, to avoid this possibility and risk of fraud happening across real estate sectors, right? So the benefits are huge. Reduced cost, immutability, transactions cannot be changed, modified, or deleted, reduction in transaction errors. Once a transaction registered with secure hashing in place to reduce the risk of fraud and counterfeit records, right? But do we really need blockchain in this case? I mean, can we solve these problems without blockchain? And the answer is yes. We can solve these problems without blockchain, but the difference is it will cost us a lot more because we have to program all these security features within the actual solution. In blockchain, the security layers, the hashing algorithms are all built into the network itself. So you can simply provide an Ethereum blockchain solution and deploy your solution on it. So very simply, how to start a blockchain project. We cover this in part of the training. Essentially, we have what is called the blockchain analysis document. This gives us clear cut, it's about 11 questions in the document, which we actually go through and we analyze. Do you need blockchain for this use case? Yes or no? And if so, we start deciding and thinking what is the most suitable blockchain solution for your project. Whether you want to go for a private blockchain, whether you should go for a public blockchain, whether you would need token or not, right? Whether you're going to use, what are the cost advantages between a private blockchain or a public blockchain? And understanding these points will help enable you to really make the right decision and choosing the right blockchain platform for your project, right? So of course, there are cons to blockchain. Blockchain is not perfect. There are negative sides, just like any other technology. Blockchain projects are expensive. They are high capex because blockchain developers are getting some of the highest salaries in the world today. Blockchain is not 100% secure, right? Public blockchain has a risk of 51% hashing attack. Private blockchain versus public blockchain, there are different advantages and disadvantages to each. This is why it's critical for us to be able to make the right decision by choosing the right blockchain platform for that specific use case. Some use cases or projects may be suitable to have a public blockchain. Others can have a private blockchain depending on what your use case is and what your nature of your transactions and volumes are, right? So conclusion, we were able to cover the COVID-19 impact on the world digital economy, how blockchain started, how blockchain solves business problems today, what blockchain is not, the secure hashing algorithm between blockchain and how it works, how it functions, how it is a mathematical operation, which allows us that we cannot reverse or change transactions going forward. And of course, the digital economy report and its impact and how blockchain plays a big role. Basically, I've been doing training for blockchain since 2018. And these are some of the classes which I did back in Bahrain and also in the UAE and very soon in Saudi Arabia. So here are my contact details. And we're now actually planning to launch blockchain courses online for people who are interested to be able to actually blockchain for finance, logistics, supply chain, and real estate sector. This will enable, again, the whole idea is to be able to choose the right blockchain solution for your enterprise and be able to choose the right blockchain platform to suit your business needs and to help improve your value proposition for your end customers. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate your efforts. And if we have any questions, we can go ahead and answer them.
So, thanks. Very, very informative, and I'm sure the audience would be, very interested to learn more. One of the questions which has come is, you talked about, medical records and blockchain, how they can be used. Do you see any of the, vaccine trials that's going on for COVID now using blockchain to ensure that the results which we are getting are the actual results and not something which the drug manufacturer would like us to believe?
Great question. And the answer is yes, absolutely. Currently, IBM's Hyperledger blockchain solution is working closely in this area. They want to be able to, the idea is, again, as you said, they want to be able to authenticate the results when they come out by any of those medicine companies to ensure that they were not fast-tracked, they were not impacted by political motives to be able to show us the results, and they were not really forged or changed or modified in any way. So they really want to ensure that there's authenticity to each of those trials, and specifically what was tested when these trials were conducted. So blockchain and the security built into the network can really help provide a security layer to make sure we get what we actually are promised.
Okay. The other question which I have received is, in the last 6 months in the, COVID era, which is the industry where you've seen blockchain being adopted the most, and what has really stopped the adoption in some of the other sectors?
Well, currently, even from the beginning of the year, financial services is by far the most advanced when it comes to blockchain, just because of the nature of the technology. And it just presents a huge cost advantage when doing transactions, especially when you have a large volume of transactions and we're doing global transactions country to country. So the cost is a big advantage, and that's why remittance market, international remittances, sending money abroad is a big, huge area. A lot of the big financial exchanges, currency exchanges are using now blockchain and testing it, even the Middle East and the US, to be able to send money abroad between different countries because of the cost. So financial services, investment banks are getting close to implementations of live blockchain projects, and the real estate sector as well. There's a company in the UK called Smart Lands, which are doing token share ownership. The reason for real estate is because a lot of the hotel chains have been suffering a lot from the COVID-19 impact worldwide. Now they have all these assets and high costs, but they don't know how to leverage it. So blockchain comes up as a token share. So for example, now you can be able to take, let's say, a hotel in New York and issue a token share of that 20%, 30% token of that equity share of that hotel and put it in a marketplace where any person, you and me, would be able to purchase that 10, 20% stake in that New York hotel on that token share and be able to gain the profits yearly distributed to our accounts. That's a big advantage for real estate, and that's what they're looking for now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Fawaz. Thank you, Fawaz, and thanks for your time. So that brings me to the next speaker, Mr. Sanjay Puri. Sanjay is the chairman and founder of the US-India Political Action Committee, and he's also looking into a lot of investments into the digital economy. So I think, Sanjay, probably I would start off asking that you've heard some of the previous speakers talk about some of the digital innovations, some of the new age companies, sort of dabbling into some of these, how those are becoming mainstream, becoming part of the, mainstream economy, if I might call it. And probably the digital economy is probably going to, become far more relevant than the physical economy in some ways. But, as you look at it as an investor, what are some of your thought processes around, what's happening in this space?
No, first, good morning from Washington. Thank you so much for having me and for the organizers for putting this fantastic. I've been listening intently and learning about some of these new technologies because you have such a tremendous group of speakers. So congratulations for that. So coming to your point, technology for the sake of technology is not what an investor is looking for. What we look for is how is it going to impact a business or a user, or how is it going to have a huge market potential? So generally, when we invest, we look at the leadership team, what experience do they have, or what passion do they have, what background do they bring, and what is the size of the market. Some of the things you've talked about is in blockchain, it's in digital transformation, it's in the mobile health apps, and those are all very, very relevant. But when I also start looking at things that need to be done, there's so many opportunities that India has. When you look at the farm to the fork, the digitization, you look at how can you improve the life of people with digitization and getting them better prices for their produce, etc. A lot of things that technology has done to remove. One of the things technology has done, Arnav, is disintermediation of the middleman. And you look at travel. Historically, you would go to a travel agent. I'm nothing against travel agents, don't get me wrong, but typically right now you generally can still go to a travel app, or you can go directly to an airline app and generally buy your tickets and things of that nature. The same should apply for a farmer or things of that nature. Now with cloud technology, some of those things are really, really valuable. So we have looked at investments and have done tremendous amounts of investments in the transportation sector, because for any country and any economy to be relevant, transportation of people and goods is obviously very, very critical. So we look at that sector, and that applies not just to United States, where we have a large number of deaths. You see what's happening in the autonomous mobile market space. Waymo, which is a Google company, has done tremendous work. And so we've done a lot of early stage startup investments in sensors, in mapping, etc. So that's been a big area. Food and wellness has been a huge area, because in this country, alternative meats, proteins have become a huge business. When you look at Beyond Meat, Impossible Burger, etc. And and I would say to you that India is really primed for these things, because we have such historically backgrounds in ingredients and technologies that exist, whether it's cell-based technology and things of that nature. And especially in West Bengal, you have a lot of expertise that exists for doing some of these things. And then I would also look at cyber, Arnav, because the key thing right now is whether it is in offensive or defensive, cyber has become a very, very critical. Whether it's your banking applications, while in the midst of COVID here, Arnav, largest number of hospitals were hacked, and they were done ransomware. And while they were taking care of COVID patients, it's a real shame that they had their system completely hacked, and they had no option but to pay up ransomware to get access to the system while they were taking care. So those are things. So those are the areas that we are looking at, and obviously the things that your panelists have talked about are obviously very, very relevant. So it's an exciting time, and really look forward to seeing how we can collaborate with you, West Bengal, and all these entrepreneurs that you brought on the panel today.
So I think you touched on some really important ones, Sanjay, and I think the farmers' price discovery process is something which is really close to the heart of many people right now in the country. But more importantly, as you talked about the investment climate and the investment perspective, very more tuned to West Bengal and what you're seeing. You talked about what's the team like, what's the kind of technology they're using, what's the kind of use case they're solving, the applicability of that. Any thoughts around what could be areas where West Bengal should be focused on, or startups in West Bengal could really be looking at? Some words of advice.
See, every country, every region, every company should first look at its strengths. And I'm not a West Bengal expert, but what I see, and when I started my first company, I had a joint venture partner based in Salt Lake. So that's what my experience was. And what I found was, what you have is a tremendous talent pool of people. I mean, that everybody knows West Bengal, so the talent pool is tremendous. So you have to leverage on that. And I think you have a large coastal area. So I would say that's the other thing that also is there. So the talent pool exists. And I think if you can leverage on that, because, the Bangalore's, Hyderabad's, and maybe the Gurgaons and the Punes are maxed out. I mean, in terms of the labor, the cost of wages, as well as access to people. Calcutta, and I think regions around them are places which can attract. And the key would be to build an ecosystem of companies where there is not just an Infosys saying, okay, we're going to have 5,000 people. I think what's more important is, can you have 50 early stage or growth stage companies that are in there. And for that, the state will have to come in, because what do entrepreneurs need? And that's the biggest challenge I find in India is investment capital. You got to find a way to give money, find money. In the US, it is so easy to raise capital, and I find that it's much, much harder. And especially the past, I've been a member of, angel funds in India, etc. Things have dried up. I can see the number of deals that we have done and things of that nature. So I'm just thinking, what is happening to a startup person? But if that doesn't exist, the state needs to set up. I mean, look at what the United States did for this vaccine issue. You know how many tens of billions of dollars they wrote checks to Pfizer's, to the Oxfords and others, just for innovation. And it's a record time that you have a vaccine. It's never happened before. Literally in 6 months, you have a vaccine that's 95% efficacy. It takes at least 2-3 years to do it. But the funding was done, guarantees for buying were done. So if the environment doesn't exist, maybe the state kind of at least jumps in. So give some funding to the people, but also make sure the intellectual property of these entrepreneurs is protected. And that's my big worry that I see in the investments that we have done, is they spend a lot of time coming up with some incredible opportunities. Then you see large companies sitting in the back room, taking notes and coming up with the same thing. And I've seen some very large companies do that. And you kill entrepreneurship by doing that. It's really, in this country, obviously in the United States, if you did that, you would have a massive lawsuit on your hands. But so those are some things I would say, at least from my perspective.
Right. And, as you look at this ecosystem, and you very rightly pointed out that it's not about the Infosys, building a 5,000 people center, but how you create an ecosystem which is fueling continuous innovation. And, in a way, what we understand is that, the platform economy and, the ecosystem play is really the play of the future. How do you see that kind of a, ecosystem develop in India? And I'm talking broadly India, because what we've seen is, if you look at the fintech world, there's been a ecosystem which is developed. There's been huge strides which we have made on the digital payment side. If we look at probably edutech, or we probably look at health tech, or we probably look at, agri-tech, yes, we are looking at innovation, but if you look at the ecosystem play, I think the ecosystem play is not yet there. And, in some ways, the ecosystem fuels more small innovation, because they know that I can, flourish in an ecosystem. I can't flourish just by myself, right? So what's your view around some of the others, where you see some of these ecosystems developing next?
So again, I said, I would, a few things. Cyber, I would say, is definitely something that West Bengal should look at, because tap the diaspora. You have an amazing diaspora that exists. I mean, I know some of the brightest people, and not trying to say it because I'm talking to you, are people from this the great state of West Bengal that are out there. So I would tap, and some of them that has already been done. And one thing I can tell you, the people from West Bengal who are outside have a deep love for that state, and they want to find ways to do that. I think the challenge for them a lot of times is, how do I do it? So if you can find a way to tap into them, because they bring their network, they bring their expertise in doing so. So I would say tap the diaspora, look at certain areas of cyber and even defense, because you have a large coastline area. And when I say defense, everything today is about tech and digital economy. Everything is about that today. So, I live in Washington, which is a huge hub for defense. They spend close to $1 trillion in this country on defense. But what I'm saying is, there's so much that needs to happen even in the digital economy. The future wars are cyber wars. They're going to be based on drones. They're going to be based on those kinds of things. And I'm saying is, not trying to sound warmongering, but from a protection standpoint, there is a lot that you can offer from the West Bengal, because you have a workforce that exists, and there is a lot of funds that would be available to do that. Drones are going to be a key part of what happens in the future. In this country already, from a mapping standpoint, from oil discovery standpoint, from even flood relief standpoint, from insurance standpoint, all that has happened. And I think West Bengal can take some kind of a leap towards that. So those would be some of the things I would definitely look at.
One of the questions which has come in from the audience, Sanjay, is, in some of the locations like Bangalore, you have a lot of tech money flying back into the tech startups, right? If you have a non-tech money, being expected to plow into tech startups, with the kind of evolution of technology and the fast-changing technology that's happening, is it dependable or is it prudent to invest in tech? Because what you might be investing in with less, knowledge of technology might just be, as you said, it can be copied by a bigger company, or it can just become irrelevant in, some time. So I think that's one of the thoughts which many investors would have if they don't have a very good appreciation of, underlying technology.
Well, I would just urge them to look at the top 5 wealthiest people in the world and take a guess which industry they are from. So if you really want to look at where the largest wealth is being created, not just in the United States, even in China. I mean, how long has it been for TikTok to be in existence? What, 5 years, 7 years? I don't know. A company, their US operation is valued at $55 billion. Just the US operation. Just think about that. In 5 to 7 years, name me any other industry that can have that kind of a growth. There is no other industry. I understand you could be in any industry. It's not because I'm in the tech world that I'm saying. But the kind of growth that you can have here with not the only investments that you have to make is in the brain power of the people that you bring, which lies tremendously in West Bengal. And have an innovative idea, but make sure your founders get funded and their intellectual property is protected globally. I would do that. And yes, you're going to have some losses. That's just a fact of investments in tech. There will be some losses, but by golly, the wins that you're going to have are going to make up 10 times more than your losses. If you find one TikTok, one Dropbox, or any of those things that come, and that is the future for your young generation. The young generation is probably not wanting to go back into the farms or into the old manufacturing businesses. We do need those manufacturing businesses, etc. But when you send them out to get educated, the challenge is it's very hard. The genie has been let out. So we have to create the jobs for those young people in Calcutta and other places, etc., who are going to do this and put them to good use. And that's what it's not just a great business value, but it is also a great social value.
So one of the things which, probably follows that kind of question is that, if somebody wants to get into it, what are some of the pitfalls you would probably warn an investor against based on your experience of being a tech investor for decades?
So as I said, I basically we invest in the people running the business. The technology is important, but if you have smart people, they will figure it out. If it is this thing is not working, they'll pivot to something else. So you really find and look at the history and the character of the people that you're investing in, how resilient they are, what is the background, have they done this before, etc. So I think that's number one I would look at. The second is, what is the scope of the market? Is it a fairly large marketplace? Because if the market is small size, it's going to be really hard, because we need something that is going to have a large user base, a large marketplace where you can be 1, 2, or 3. And what are the barriers to entry for others? Is this something, as you said, that some large giant can copy pretty quickly and just come roll through on you? So I would look at those 3 things. and then move forward with that. But there are so many opportunities that exist. I mean, look at the platform we are talking on right now. This is a company till a year ago that very few people had heard about. And the word Zoom is now like Google, that I'm going to do Zoom. And look at the valuation and look at the revenues they've posted from last year to this year, 10 times more, just because our world has changed. And it allows me in Washington to talk to you in Calcutta and other places and your other visitors from all over the world. So those are the choices that we have. Those are the opportunities we have.
Right. In terms of, some of the investments that you have probably either advised on or made recently, any which you would probably like to, just talk about. I know that there are, restrictions on what you can share and what you can't, but, anything which you would probably think that the audience might find interesting.
Well, I'll tell you something that's not tech, which is, I think is Calcutta based, and which actually turned out pretty good for me. But I'll also maybe tell you about some of the tech ones too. And because I personally like momos, I invested in a company called Wow Momos, which is, I think, based here in, started at least with some young people in there. And that turned out to be a very good investment because they grew, again, great entrepreneurs who picked a niche in the market and did well. I have done an investment in a few autonomous vehicle companies here in the US. And one of them does LiDAR sensors. LiDARs are basically those cameras that go on top of the vehicles that kind of shoot light sensors to see the distance between the cars. And for autonomous vehicles to succeed, LiDARs are very, very critical. And that has been a tremendous success because, it's not the car, but it's all the pieces, the mapping that goes into it, the sensors and all those things. That has been, I would say, been a great success. The other success I've had has been in basically it's been in a UAV, a drone company, which does work for the defense oriented options. And then there has been one in the cyber area. They have a unique technology in terms of what they do. It's been a variety of technologies, except obviously Wow Momo was something I thought the entrepreneurs were good and it turned out great. But it's been very, very interesting. Obviously, there have been quite a few that didn't work out, even though it checked the boxes of great entrepreneurs, great markets, etc. And sometimes things don't work out because circumstances happen. They couldn't get the second round because money dried up after the, you did the demonetization, etc. So, some of those external things which are beyond entrepreneurs. But it's been I would say, a fairly successful run. And I've learned from each and every exercise, I'll tell you, Arnav, I have learned more and more. And because these people are way smarter than I am, who are way more energy than I am. And I think that's the beauty of this exercise.
Thank you, Sanjay, and great talking to you. And I think I learned a lot talking to you about this, and I would be looking at investments in a very different light, subsequent to our conversation. So thanks a lot for making time. For the audience, we had 4 different perspectives. Starting from how we are looking at human health and well-being and mobile apps to help. Then from there to how we are looking at privacy and security concerns. Then on to blockchain, and then of course the investor's view into the digital economy. Angana, if I can hand it back to you, and before I hand it back, again a round of thanks and applause from my side for all the speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Arnav. Thanks to all the speakers. We had great discussions. So we will take a short break and we will join at 8 IST for the health tech session. And we would also like to thank our audience who are online with us, our friends from media, and our sponsors, diamond sponsor, MB Software, gold sponsor, PwC, silver sponsors, Infinity, NextGen, JIS, who's also our chief patron, bronze sponsor, CESC, EasyRex, Dr. Reddy's Laboratories, Mothers Group, outreach partner, American International Chamber of Commerce, and special thanks to Government of West Bengal IT and E Department and Rebel. So with this, we are closing this session and we will join back at 8 p.m. IST for the health tech session. Thank you all. See you.